On an autumn afternoon in 1969, the little town of Abbeville, Louisiana basked under a warm sun and a hush that only small southern towns know how to keep. Storefronts rested behind neat glass windows, a few folks lingered on porch stoops, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked once, then gave up the effort. Nothing here ever seemed urgent, which suited Elsie and Charlie just fine. They were not young men anymore, but they weren't old yet either, that sturdy in-between age where you trusted your gut more than your eyes. They had been down from Lafayette for a few hours, handling small-time insurance paperwork and swapping the same stories they'd been swapping for 10 years. By mid-afternoon, they sat in a diner booth, letting the last bites of pie settle and nursing black coffee that had long gone lukewarm. Elsie, whose real name even Charlie barely used, wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. "You ready to head north?" he asked. Charlie tapped the rim of his mug twice, his habit when he was half listening, half planning their next move. "Yeah, let's make a push before dark." Withers gone a hold. Out in the parking lot, their old Ford sedan waited under a thin blanket of falling leaves. The air had a crisp edge, but not enough to roll the windows up. Elsie paused at the passenger door, glancing around Abbeville's main drag. Something tugged at the back of his mind. Nothing specific, just a hum of tension he couldn't name. He almost reached for the radio knob once they were rolling but let his hand drop instead. Charlie noticed. "You look like you just saw a ghost." "Just tired," Elsie lied, settling back as the car hummed to life. The two men let the gentle purr of the motor and the rolling fields beyond the windshield calm whatever jitters threatened to crawl up their spines. Highway 167 stretched out like an easy promise, clean pavement, fields of sugarcane on either side, and the occasional mailbox to remind you civilization still cared. A few miles out of town, Charlie reached to crank down his window further. The breeze carried a crispness that only October in Louisiana could muster, half summer's leftover heat, half winter's distant rumor. Elsie found himself drifting into the gentle hypnosis of highway miles. Mile marker, fence post, curve, repeat. It should have been just that. But as they rounded a slow bend past a grove of pecan trees, Elsie's eyes sharpened on a dark speck up ahead, wobbling just out of sync with everything else. "See that?" he asked. Charlie squinted. "Looks like an old heap moving slow. Maybe a farmer's runabout." But as they gained on it, the shape took on details that made the hair at Elsie's neck stand up. It wasn't some battered pickup or dented Ford from the 50s. It was older, way older. Painted a deep, polished black that gleamed perfectly, the car ahead crawled along as if it had never known an interstate speed limit. Its rounded back, swooping fenders, and thin chrome bumpers screamed 1940s, maybe even late 30s, but without a single sign of rust, dust, or wear. Charlie whistled low. "That's museum metal right there. Who the hell drives that on a Tuesday?" "Maybe he's heading to a show," Elsie offered, but even he didn't believe it. The road was empty but for them and the relic drifting ahead like a ghost. As they pulled closer, Elsie's unease swelled. The car's license plate was big and bright orange, numbers embossed in a font that felt decades wrong. He recognized it from photos in old insurance files, a style retired long before he was licensed to drive. They came up close enough to catch glimpses through the rear glass. A shape moved inside, a woman, maybe mid-20s, shoulders squared, wearing what looked like a fur collar and a hat that belonged in a 1940s film reel. Beside her, or rather half standing on the front bench seat, was a child bundled tight in a little coat, a knit cap hiding the hair. Charlie's voice cut the silence. "Elsie, you see this?" Elsie nodded. He did, and he felt it too, that same whispering tension, now not behind his ribs. He leaned out the window slightly, hoping to catch her eye, maybe wave her to the side. But in that instant, he wondered, what would he even say? Behind them, the miles of Louisiana highway remained stubbornly normal. Ahead of them, the past seemed to roll on for immaculate wheels. Neither man could know that with each slow mile, They were slipping toward a bend in time they wouldn't soon forget. Charlie eased off the gas as they crept alongside the rolling antique. From this angle, there was no mistaking the woman now, her posture rigid behind the wide steering wheel, hands gloved in white, fingers wrapped so tightly her knuckles showed pale than through the leather. Elsie leaned closer to the window, squinting to catch details. Her eyes flicked to him, then back to the road, then to him again, and what he saw made his skin tighten, confusion, fear, and something else. It was as if she were looking not at another driver on a country highway, but at something she could not believe existed. The child beside her shifted, pressing closer into the woman's side. A tiny mittened hand clutched at the fur collar. For a fleeting moment, Elsie could see the small round face, cheeks flush red, eyes wide and unblinking. That child wasn't bored or tired. It looked terrified. Charlie called out across Elsie's lap. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" No answer. Not even a flicker of recognition on her face. Her mouth moved, lips shaping words that made no sound. Her eyes darted to the dashboard, the mirror, the road behind them, everywhere except directly at the men who now matched her speed. Elsie gestured emphatically, hoping she might understand a universal sign. "Slow down, pull over, let us help you." He mouthed the words, pointing at the shoulder ahead. She stared back, frozen, then nodded in a jerky, desperate motion. "Good," Charlie said, voice tight. "We'll get her off the road. Call the sheriff. See what's going on." They accelerated just enough to swing in front of her. The old car obediently eased its nose toward the dusty shoulder. The plan was simple. Stop ahead, get out, wave her down, and then figure it out. Elsie's pulse hammered as they rolled onto the shoulder. He pushed open his door before the tires had fully stopped. A glance back, and the highway behind them was empty. He spun toward Charlie. Where the hell did they? Charlie was already halfway out, scanning the road like a man expecting a magician's trick to reverse itself any second. The afternoon sun glared harmlessly off the empty asphalt. There was nothing. No taillights, no glimpse of antique chrome, not even the faintest cough of an old engine. Elsie jogged a few steps down the shoulder, eyes raking the tree line for a side path, a turn off, anything. There was nothing but flat open field and the steady hum of cicadas. "You saw her pull behind us, right?" Charlie asked, voice pitched higher than usual. Elsie didn't answer. He just stood there, chest heaving, replaying every heartbeat of the last 2 minutes in his head. He knew what he'd seen: the antique car, the woman's terror, the child clinging to her coat, and yet here he was, staring down an empty highway under a perfect autumn sky. Then came the slam of another car door. A young man, maybe mid-30s, sunburned and road-weary, had pulled up behind them. He sprinted over, looking half out of breath, half out of his mind. "Where'd they go?" he demanded. Charlie turned to him, caught between relief and disbelief. "You saw them too?" "Hell yes, I saw them. Been behind y'all for 10 miles. I thought I was losing my mind. She was gonna pull over. I saw her signal." And then he made a sweeping gesture at the open road, as if that explained everything and nothing at once. Together, the 3 men stood in the soft gravel, strangers united by a puzzle that mocked every scrap of common sense they possessed. For nearly an hour they combed the stretch of shoulder, peered down fence gaps, even poked around a drainage ditch half hidden by reeds. No tracks, no broken branches, no fresh tire marks. The earth itself offered no clue that an automobile, let alone a 40-year-old relic in mint condition, had ever touched this place. Charlie was the first to break the silence. He turned to the newcomer, voice steady but low. "You gonna tell the sheriff?" The man hesitated, eyes flicking from Elsie to Charlie and back. "You gonna back me up?" Elsie thought of the laughter they'd hear if they told it straight, how their wives would worry about their minds slipping, how neighbors would whisper over backyard fences. He looked the stranger square in the face. "Forget the sheriff," Elsie said. "Nobody'd believe it anyway." The man sighed, nodded. He scribbled down his name and number on a scrap of paper torn from an old map, just in case. This ever makes sense. When he drove off, Charlie and Elsie stayed parked by the side of Highway 167 a long while, doors open, listening to the wind rustle the sugar cane. There was no sign of the woman, no sign of the child, and no sign of that impossible car. All that remained was the echo of her wide, horrified eyes, and a sick certainty that something unexplainable had brushed right past their ordinary day. Long after the third man's taillights disappeared down the ribbon of Highway 167, Elsie and Charlie lingered by their parked car, neither quite ready to slide back behind the wheel. A hush had fallen over the roadside, heavy with questions no one had the nerve to say aloud. It was Charlie who finally pulled his pack of smokes from his shirt pocket. He struck a match, shielding it from the lazy October breeze with a cupped hand. "What the hell did we just see, Elsie?" Elsie shrugged but didn't answer. How could he? He replayed every detail in his mind like an old newsreel on repeat. The antique car shimmering in the Louisiana sun. The woman's eyes brimming with that raw, impossible fear. The way she clutched the wheel as if it were the last thing tethering her to sanity. And then, gone, as if she'd driven straight out of their time and into a crack in the world. Finally, Elsie murmured, "Doesn't matter what it was? Nobody's gonna believe two insurance adjusters saw a ghost car with a lady from 1940. Charlie exhaled a plume of smoke that drifted over the quiet fields. Ghost car, time traveler, residual haunting? Damned if I know. Feels like the road itself was thin, like we hit a wrinkle in God's map." He forced a dry laugh, but it died quick. Back inside the Ford, Elsie flipped the ignition. The old engine turned over with a comforting rumble, familiar and mundane, a sound that belonged to the real world. They pulled back onto the highway, the tires humming steady beneath them, every mile marker counting them away from the impossible. But the further they drove, the heavier it sat on Elsie's shoulders. He couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere behind them, or maybe ahead or beside, that woman was still trapped behind her steering wheel, forever halfway between then and now. The child's small hand knotted in fear around her coat. For weeks afterward, Elsie found himself waking at night to the ghost of that car in his mind. Sometimes he dreamed he was the one behind the wheel, rolling helplessly down a road that never ended, shadows of unfamiliar cars zipping past as if he were the out-of-place thing haunting someone else's reality. He never told Charlie. Charlie never told him what kept him awake. Some silences are best left untouched. Now and then, they'd hear a whisper about Highway 167. A cousin's cousin would swear they'd seen a flicker of chrome where no car should be. A young driver would claim an old black sedan drifted past them near dusk, then blinked out in their rearview mirror like a blown light bulb. Elsie would nod politely at these stories, say, "That's something," and pour another cup of coffee. Deep down, he knew what those folks had seen. He knew, but he'd take it to his grave before he let the word time slip leave his lips at the local diner. Years turned like leaves in the wind. Elsie and Charlie kept working their routes. Life, as it always does, demanded practical things, premiums paid, accidents filed, kitchen roofs patched. But every so often, a small moment, a low fog drifting over an empty highway, or the faint smell of old leather in a borrowed car, would drop him back into that October afternoon, into the heartbeat of a story that logic couldn't kill. One autumn evening, decades later, a younger insurance man sat across from Elsie in the same diner where it all began. The kid was fresh out of training, full of bright talk and small-town gossip. "You ever hear that one, Elsie?" the kid asked. "About the phantom lady on 167. Some folks say you and old Charlie saw her once." Elsie, hair thin and silver now, smiled slowly. "People talk. Folks love a ghost story when the road gets long. So, you never saw it." Elsie stirred his coffee. For a breath, the steam rose like mist off the highway, and in it, for just a second, he thought he saw a young woman in a fur coat, eyes wide and pleading. "Nah," he said finally. Not the way they tell it, but when he left the diner that night, he drove extra slow along 167, and when the miles turned quiet, when the moon slid behind a drift of cloud, Elsie caught himself checking his mirrors, half hoping, half fearing that somewhere back there, the past might still be trying to catch up.